fans, and welcome once again to Fans Forum, the show where we put you, the fans, in pole position, driving our conversation. As this weekend just gone, every motorsport fan across the world had their eyes glued to Interlagos for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, which saw Lando Norris now boast back-to-back Grand Prix wins and even squeeze in a sprint victory as well, just to add to the woes of his teammate Oscar Piastri, who must be looking around thinking, what have I done to upset the gods? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to be delving into all of that and more with myself and my VIP co-host, but we are nothing without you guys in the chat box as well. So a big hello, as always, to Ewan and Gary that have joined us once again, our ever-presents, and you can see who our guest is as he's just giving you guys a wave. It is George Talks F1, the man himself from TikTok. George, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us tonight on the show.
No, thank you, James, for the invite. As soon as you invited me, I was so happy to come on. I've been waiting to shed some of my thoughts on this season as a whole, to be honest, with somebody who seems like-minded from what I've seen.
Brilliant, bud. Cannot absolutely wait to get into it. But listen, for those that maybe they're not aware of your content or your love affair with F1 and motorsport generally, tell us a little bit, first and foremost, buddy, of where it all began for you.
I think I was about 6 years old, to be honest, and Formula One was on ITV like every weekend. I absolutely loved, and just fell in love with it. I fell in love with watching Michael Schumacher and just all the greats at the time. Missed a couple of years, sort of Alonso years, sort of fell out of love, but fell straight back in love sort of as soon as Lewis Hamilton hit Formula One in 2007, and it was just game on from there, just completely.
I can see you sporting the scarlet red of Scuderia Ferrari. You mentioned Michael Schumacher, so I don't want to age you, but was this kind of the 2000 to 2004 stint where no one was touching Shuey?
Yes, roughly there or thereabouts. I'm just trying to properly place it. I'd say, yeah, there. 2003-4, I think, was when I really sort of gauged it properly as a young fan.
Yeah, and a real gold.
The red car.
This is it. I was just going to say, in a real golden era for the red car as well, buddy. But not so much at the moment. And we're going to get into the performance once again. So Gary's telling me my audio's off again, mate. So Gary, is there a bit of an echo on me, or is it on George just before we start? Sorry, George, we had this last week. I just want to get it nailed. Let me just check your mic settings. Here we go. And check mine. Boom. Right. Okay, so we'll test it out like that, guys. Give us some feedback as always, just so we know. But also, I'll tell you what, while you're out there as well, Gary and Ewan, what do you think? I put this show out as a live post earlier, and I said, has Lando got one hand on the World Championship trophy now? So Ewan and Gaz, what do you think? Is it now Lando's to lose? And anybody else out there in the chat box as well? I can see we've got a couple of you in there, but let's ask George, our VIP co-host and guest for tonight as well. George, what I want to start with, and I mentioned this on my show last week as well, is that it's clear that they no longer have the standout car, but Lando is delivering. Why do you think that is, and what have you made for the turnaround of the young Brit?
Well, I must admit, I'm not Lando's biggest fan, so I might upset some Lando fans here. But I just think since the summer break, he's come back with a much better mindset compared to Oscar. I feel like Oscar's pressure it's starting to show. You can see it in everything he does. He used to be like ice cold. Like everything was just so quick, and now he's just not on the same level anymore. I don't know if that's he's fell out of love with the car, or if it's just the pressure thing. It's his first chance at a title for Oscar, and obviously Lando's been doing this for countless number of years now. He's probably in a position now where he should be winning world titles. Truthfully. I think.
So Gary's saying it is Lando's to lose there in the chat box. And of course, George, if you see any of the chat comments and you want to get involved and back and forth with the guys in the box,
absolutely. I've got the chat box up here. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's definitely Lando's to lose from here. I completely agree with Gary on that. I think if he loses it now, it's an almighty bottle job, should we say? We'll use the terminology, because it really is just. It would shock me if Oscar goes on to win it from here. Truthfully.
So let's take a look at the other side of the garage real quick. We will return to Lando, though.
Yeah.
First and foremost, that incident in the sprint, how much do you think that rocked Oscar for the weekend? Because he did seem that he'd done a bit of a system reset, didn't he, initially? And then that, I mean, I was looking for different words for bodies of water earlier because I was thinking the football analogy, we talk about the hand of God. I was saying, is this the Gulf of God, perhaps, within that curb that ruined his sprint race?
I mean, all credit to Lando Norris to play like World Championship, to hit that puddle exactly as he hit it, to bring the water on the track. No, on a serious note, I think that just completely reset his whole weekend. I think Oscar was looking good in the sprint. And then hit that curb, and it was just like game over. We're back to Baku, where he put it in the wall, and you just get to a point there where you just think, it's not looking good, is it really, for him at this stage?
I guess it's dangerous as well with the wet track that to be using the curb anyway. And I know Antonelli had the benefit of seeing Lando go through the puddle, but the fact that Piastri and then Hulk and then Colapinto all did it, you're already living on the edge a little bit there already, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it just shows that they were pushing it to the limit. Like, Oscar had to do something big. Like, he had to get on Lando's tail. It was that simple, because otherwise he walks away with both races, which he ended up doing. But we'll get to that, obviously. But yeah,
yes, too true. And then is there anything as well about the actual car that has lent in Lando's favour for you now as well?
I think the new suspension, they put on a new suspension supposedly. That was what I was reading somewhere today. And I think that's favoured Lando, because at the beginning of the season, Lando was having massive issues with the car and kept saying about how, even though it's quick, it's hard to drive. We're struggling. Obviously, they weren't hitting pole positions as much as they should have been. And Max was there or thereabouts at the start. And I just think the suspension change, it gives Lando just a bit more edge in the way he likes to drive. And maybe that's exactly what he needed to push on with the championship. And maybe this is just what he needed. That change is what he needed to get to that point.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw in the UK commentary, and I can't remember who it was, but one of them talked about that Oscar was driving a lot more towards the limit of the car setup earlier in the season, but it feels now that he's gone beyond that limit, particularly when they're going into warmer climates.
Yep, no, I agree with that. I think since the championship's been wrapped up, the constructors, I think the data obviously isn't being shared as much between the two drivers. So obviously if Lando is ahead and he's got that edge in X, Y, and Z corner, Oscar isn't getting that information anymore, or as much of that information anyway. So obviously, again, that's impacting Oscar. It's only his third season in the championship, so he's got to learn to be able to rely on his own data more than his own teammates, and maybe that's where the edge is for Lando.
Really good point there, actually. I didn't think about that because it did seem earlier in the season that Oscar really built into free practice sessions particularly, and then would now Lando during qualifying. But you're right, with the team maybe shutting down either side of the garage now because they're just battling one another, it means that he hasn't got that feedback that he had previously. What would you do if you was in and around Oscar Piastri to try and change this situation? And how much of it do you think comes down to a bit of bad luck, perhaps?
I think there's definitely bad luck in there. I think Baku was just an awful weekend, full stop, for Oscar. He just was all over the place, couldn't get it together. I think ultimately the people around him, Mark Webber's just got to keep motivating him, keep trying to keep him on this is whatever's happened this race, forget about it, get to the next one, let's try and bounce back next race, and he needs to go session by session. He can't afford to keep doing this. 1 minute he's fine, next minute he's down the order, like he was Mexico last weekend or the weekend before, where he just was all over the place. His pace was just non-existent, then it was there, then it was non-existent. And I think he's maybe overdriving the car, potentially. And that's where the bad luck's coming in, because he's trying to push it beyond the limit and then causing himself issues.
And if you were sitting on the other side of the garage with Lando Norris, how do you maintain focus ahead of you rather than seeing what's coming behind?
I think he just needs to focus and do what he's been doing. He came out in the interviews the other day and just said he ignores every online comment that he sees about people being negative, and he just focuses on himself. And I think he just needs to keep doing that because the pressure is now on the other side. He's 24 points ahead in the championship. Who knows what could happen? He could still lose it. I know it's probably not likely, but he could still, if he starts getting in his own head, similar to Oscar, who knows? They could slip up and all sorts could go wrong.
Yeah, it's only one retirement away. Remember, we are at that end of the season where, power units are going to be up against it now. I don't know how many McLaren have got in their pockets still, if they have any. But, yeah, so it's only one retirement, one shunt, for example, which brings us on nicely, really, to talk about the Grand Prix incident and what you made of the penalty for Oscar Piastri. And I guess the details of it, because it did feel like he had the inside line, didn't he?
Yes, he definitely had the inside line. And by the letter of this is where things get complicated. By the letter of the racing regulations, it's a penalty to Oscar because he's supposedly out of control. He hits another car. However, from watching it as a neutral, I think Kimi has his part in that. And he goes too close to Oscar, and Oscar has to brake hard to try and avoid that collision. So I think potentially maybe still a penalty to Oscar for being there and being out of control. But 10 seconds, it's a bit harsh, I think. And especially in a title challenge, considering what we had last week with Max and Lewis in the corner cutting scenarios in Mexico and how penalties weren't given. And then suddenly there's a huge 10-second penalty to Oscar, which effectively ruined his race because he would have finished maybe P2 and potentially would have taken this, it would have been a lot closer in the championship, and it could have just robbed us of a climatic finish in his next 3 races.
So would you say it's the lockup that did it then? So Oscar's positioning, if he'd have maintained that but hadn't locked his front right, then he would have got away with it.
Yep, but I do think he locks up because of Kimi. So I do think he's almost forced into the lockup because it's either that or they crane into each other and he goes out the race anyway. Because Kimi sort of moves onto the inside. If you'd seen the video that Karun did at the end of the race, there was a lot of analysis of where Kimi could have gone. Because Kimi could have gone a lot further out wide, considering where Charles Leclerc was, because Charles was up right on the edge of that turn 1. So there was so much space in the middle of the track. So I just think, by the rules, it's a penalty, and that's the reality of it. I think no matter what we say, by the rule book, it's a penalty. Yeah,
Gary's right behind you there, bud. Rules is rules. I know he's definitely saying that, Gary, with his Union Jack hat on. But so, just got a point from you in there that he's saying that Leclerc doesn't blame Oscar. I've not seen any of those sound bites. Have you seen anything about that, George? And do you think that could be true? Because it feels like the momentum comes from Oscar all the way through.
I didn't see it as such. I sort of glanced at it earlier on today when I was at work. But it was, I could definitely see if he's gone on the same reasoning as me, as Antonelli had way much more room to wiggle around, and there was a gap, and every driver knows from Ayrton Senna, if you don't go for a gap, you're not a racing driver. There was a gap, so he had to do it, and for his championship, he had to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, really. He had no choice but to do it. So I can see the other side that you can't really blame Oscar too much, but you've got to, ultimately it's a penalty, and that's just the rule book, and we need to get consistent with the rule book, I think.
And Lando Norris had a pretty incident-free race. The only part would have been from about lap 51 onwards, when a certain T-Rex / Great White Shark Max Verstappen put on a set of softs and begin to run him down. Did you think there was any chance of Max catching Lando towards the end there?
There was a moment initially when he pitted when I thought, just maybe, but you started to realise that the softs were not going to hang on that long. They hadn't all weekend. Even in the sprint, they were struggling, and they got very lucky with the red flag, because I think the people who started on the softs in the sprint would have gone backwards. So I think in reality, no. And I also think Lando was managing his pace pretty much all race. He didn't really have a race, to be honest. He sort of just got out in front and did the business, which is exactly what you expect the top drivers to do.
Any part of Lando that will be looking forward towards Vegas and maybe thinking, oh, it's a tough one, street circuit, no margin for error, could perhaps get in his own head without even realising it?
Yeah, I think Vegas is a bogey track for McLaren these last couple of years. They haven't been that great there at all. So I think there's got to be a degree of, it's a bogey track. Let's try and just do our best. And then obviously you get into your own head of, but the championship, and it starts to obviously tumble into a big sort of anxiety bubble that nobody really wants going into the championship title deciders ultimately.
So just give us it then, mate. You're champion for this year, and why?
It's got to be Lando now. Unfortunately, for most of the season, I was very optimistic for Oscar, but I just think he's got the bit between his teeth now. Lando gets the car. He understands the data. He is the quicker driver. I think had Max won this weekend, I might have said something completely different. But yeah, I think all he's got to do now is just make sure he stays incident free, and he should be okay. I think I saw something earlier that he could finish second every race now and still win the world championship. So that's all he needs to do, even if Oscar wins every race. So I think now Lando Norris wins it.
Yeah, try and keep himself out of trouble. And also, do you think that perhaps we may not have the same scenario if the team had been continuing developing their car? So if they were also pushing their car to the edge because they were in a constructors' championship battle, do you think that perhaps maybe Oscar, with this ability to push to the limit, would have rose to the occasion?
Possibly, but I think with the new regulations, we can't really think that much about it because it was always going to happen at some point where all the teams were just going to forget these cars, except Red Bull, who seem to keep bringing upgrades. They were just going to forget about these cars and just focus on 26. So I think the only way that Oscar would have won is if the suspension wasn't changed, but could that be a potential McLaren doing something a bit for their boy who's been there the whole time sort of thing? It's hard to say. I don't want to start conspiracies or anything, but I definitely
Do you feel there's a number one driver at McLaren secretly?
Yeah. Personally, yes. I think Lando has been their number one these last 3 seasons. I don't think they expected Oscar to be as good as he is when they signed him. So I think ultimately, now that he is that good, they've had to do it behind closed doors. They've had to say, look, Lando's our man. Let's try and figure out what's going on with Lando's car, and we'll leave Oscar sort of not out to dry, but we'll leave little details off the table that are not necessarily relevant to the car anymore.
And what do you think this could mean for both their positions and the 2 seats at that team for 2026 and beyond?
Well, if whoever wins it this year, I mean, looking like Lando, but he becomes de facto number one, does he not? He's a world champion at that point. Like, as much as Mark Webber might argue, look at Oscar, he's done this in 3 seasons, he becomes de facto number one. He's the world champion. You're not going to bet against the world champion. You're not going to completely twist the whole team to Oscar's side now just because Lando's got that world title. And with Zach Brown there, as long as Zach Brown's there, Lando Norris will always be number one.
Okay, bud. All right. I like the opinion. It's a strong one, and I can't wait to cut that clip out and get some reactions to it. But let's push it forward and talk about what was a fantastic weekend, really, for the Silver Arrows Mercedes, particularly the young rookie Kimi Antonelli. But they've really put some space between themselves and the competition for that P2 in the constructors now. Hats off to Kimi Antonelli, because the mid-season blip that he had, maybe many of them wouldn't have come back from that, would they?
Absolutely. I think Antonelli really, in the grand scheme of things, has driven older than he is. I think he's been fantastic. You've got to remember he literally jumped into an F1 car from like F2, but he's 18 years old. Like, it's crazy to think just like how much development he has and he's already showing that he's got raw pace. He just needs to obviously develop the skills to manage tyres, manage battery, manage all the rest of it, and he could be a future world champion. He's that level of driver, and I think he had a really, really good weekend this weekend.
Just a little comment from Gaz there, just saying, does Oscar stay if Lando gets the title? What do you think? Just finishing off the back of the papaya there.
I think for 26, he hasn't really got a choice because I don't think there's anywhere out there unless you go to Red Bull, which I don't think Mark Webber would like to put him in that position because it would almost be like a mimic of Webber and Vettel. For 27, however, anything could happen. Like, there's rumours that Alonso could be retiring. Lewis could potentially retire. He's getting to that sort of stage. Who knows?
Charles Leclerc could get sick of red.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc could disappear off to Mercedes or something, or Audi or someone. Ollie Behrman could move. Like, anyone could move in that season, 27.
Yeah, right. So let's put it back round to Kimi Antonelli then, and Gary just saying as well, look, he drove out of his skin, like you, George, a real mature drive there. So
and
I
looked quicker than George all weekend, is what I sort of. He looked quicker than George all weekend as well, which is I think that's like the first or second time he's done that all season.
Well, I was going to say, I was talking to people in my WhatsApp group during the race, and they were saying that they think Kimi could really push George next season. What are your thoughts on that? George Russell is the only winner outside of Max and McLaren this year, so that's a big statement from people.
I mean, it would be amazing to see it. I mean, to see a 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli taking it to George Russell, who was the prodigal son. It's like the two prodigal sons of Toto Wolff, isn't it? Really, so it would be like Toto Wolff's boys versus each other, and I think he could take it to George. However, I think experience would win out in that situation for George. He's been around the team a lot longer, and obviously been driving in Formula One for many, many years already now, which is crazy to say.
How important is it for the young man that this is now back-to-back Grand Prix that he's outperformed George Russell, though?
I think now, because of obviously all the Max situation and Max potentially going to Mercedes seems to come up every year. For Kimi to start proving himself now and starting to outrace George, it will give Toto a decision to make. Like, does he keep both Kimi and George if Max becomes available? Or who do you keep out of them? I mean, personally, you'd keep Kimi, but do you keep George because he is a world championship level driver given the right car? Or do you go with the youth of Kimi Antonelli and the fast Max Verstappen, say, if it happens in the future? It's a decision to make, definitely, if it comes to it, but we'll see.
It feels like this scenario is almost knocked on from when George emerged and then was underneath Lewis Hamilton, doesn't it? That it was George proving himself against this legend. And I know George Russell's not a legend, but possibly the gap between the two of them, with Kimi being so young, is somewhat similar. And like George, Kimi is now stepping up, isn't he? Do you think George Russell will be worried about this at all? Because like you said, this Max Verstappen rumour never goes away. And if Kimi's proven himself, you feel that all the cards have to go in Kimi's camp for Mercedes?
Absolutely. Like Gary's just said in the chat there, massive confidence boost for Kimi just out racing George this weekend. And I think George should be worried. I mean, what's his contract? There was a rumour that it was only another year, supposedly.
For both of them, I think. Both of them, the rumour is it's a year with an option.
So, given that to me sounds like if Max is available, one of them is disappearing very, very quickly because nobody's got much hope on the Red Bull powertrain next year. So I think George could be on his bike. So he does need to watch. He definitely needs to watch himself, and he needs to really outrace Kimi in the next 3 races just to sort of lay that marker of, I'm number one, this is my team. Similar to how Lewis had to do with George, and obviously didn't because of the poor regulations and the poor cars that Mercedes gave both drivers.
Yeah, he managed to turn it around just about in the end, didn't he, to just pip George, I think, statistically, by the time he left. Gary just saying, though, that if Mercedes stick with Kimi, a la McLaren with Lando, then that they could be looking for a a new world champion at some point, which would be absolutely brilliant for the Silver Arrows to return to the top, wouldn't it? But how important as well is it for them to cement this P2 in the championship? Because they've been way off the pace for a couple of seasons now, haven't they?
They have. They haven't adapted to these regulations at all, and they've struggled from 22 onwards. Lewis barely winning races after being like 11 race wins in a season and all the rest of it. George coming through and thinking he was going to be in the fastest car to ultimately be in the fourth fastest car in most cases, most weekends. It was quite bad for them, the look they've got the last few years, and I think they really need that second place to sort of bring back that mystique of Mercedes, AMG, the black Mercedes, the W11. Like when we think about Mercedes, we think about these cars, and I think honestly they definitely need the second, and I do think they'll get it because I just don't think Yuki Tsunoda delivers enough for Max, and Ferrari are all over the place. So I think they'll get second place, and they do really need it, I feel, because they're losing that mystique. Every year they're losing the mystique.
And how optimistic do you think that they will be about the 2026 reset, considering we are abandoning ground effect and Venturi tunnels, and we are returning to a moment where power unit advantage is going to be key?
I think if you hear the rumour, everything coming out is their engine is going to be clear. It's going to be the best engine by a mile. So I think they've got to be optimistic. I think in the grand scheme of things, the only team they probably need to watch out for is possibly Aston Honda, maybe. If I'm picking a team, just because of the way Ferrari and Red Bull and things, they don't look particularly fast at the moment from what the rumour and the innuendo for 26 is. But they've got to be looking at it thinking, oh, these numbers are great. Let's go in and let's absolutely dominate again, similar to 2014 onwards. Let's be a second and a half ahead of everybody, and let's have a race between the two, almost like Lewis and Nico in 2014 onwards.
Do you think, though, that this rumour just comes from that history? Like, because I'm sure every power unit manufacturer is going to be so secretive about the actual detail of their product. So I can't see how anyone's going to know. I can't believe that Ferrari, who have continuously been involved, won't have a fantastic power unit. As you mentioned, Honda, who delivered all that success with Red Bull, in seasons previous. So I think to say, oh, Mercedes are going to be far and ahead is almost a little bit nostalgia from 2014.
Yeah, I do agree, but I think it's hard to not back them because it's going back to a engine formula, and yes, the mystique about it. They aced the 2014 regulations, and all this news was coming out sort of the back end of 2013 as well about how Mercedes was supposed to be light years ahead of the competition, and they were light years ahead of the competition. We had top tens where it was just Mercedes cars and the odd Red Bull here and there, and it was just a bit crazy. So I think we've got to definitely, there's a bit of like history there, and people are like, oh, they must be the best because it's an engine formula. But I wouldn't count out the likes of Ferrari, Aston Martin with Adrian Newey especially, and Red Bull. Again, they've got some really good people in good places. They took a lot of Mercedes developers.
Yes, they took a lot of people from HPP, didn't they?
Yes.
So again, this idea that, that they're starting afresh. They are starting afresh, but with all the personnel that did the 2014 regs.
Exactly. So you can't write anybody off. Like you say, it's purely speculation at this stage. No one knows. Until we get those cars out on the grid for pre-season, we're never going to know the order. And that's what makes Formula One great. We all guess until we get to the first race, and then suddenly we go, oh.
Forget the first race, mate. Do you remember testing 2022? And teams were literally ripping holes in their floor just to let go of the suction and pressure. And you're like, oh, wow, this has really put the cat amongst the pigeons. And it took, 18 months for Mercedes to come out and say that they had an issue with their wind tunnel calibration. And there's so many elements that play their part, isn't there?
Yes, and I think correlation has been the main thing for all teams. Like, how many times have we heard over the last 3-4 seasons with Mercedes correlation? Then it was Red Bull last season with correlation. Then this year with Ferrari, it's been correlation. Just the word correlation seems to keep popping up. So you can never really truly know from wind tunnel time. You can only get that from track time.
And Mercedes are your P2 for the constructors now. So they're sitting, so they're 32 points ahead now of Red Bull. And then, of course, we know that Red Bull have always got the crutch of pretty much only having one car. And Ferrari seem to be at 6s and 7s at the moment, don't they? Let me do that for the kids.
Yes. I still don't know what that means, but yes.
No, I don't think it means anything, but they just do it.
But yes, no, I think they're bang on to finish second now. They've just got to keep doing what they're doing. And George has been consistent pretty much all season. Like you said earlier, he's been the only winner outside of Red Bull and McLaren. So if he keeps doing what he's doing, he won at Las Vegas last year. So potentially the Mercedes is going to be the strongest. Who knows?
Yeah, so put it in the chat box. Gaz, Ewan, let us know, gents. What do you think for P2 in the championship? Is it Mercedes sealed and delivered now for you guys? Or, again, only one retirement away? But Mercedes had that little blip, didn't they? Mid-season, the Mercedes power unit was there about 3 retirements in 2 races. So
yes, it was quite, and it was other cars as well, wasn't it? It wasn't just Mercedes, it was Williams and somebody else. Aston, I think, had 1 or 2.
Yeah, so Ewan's saying, yep, he's going with Mercedes. And I imagine Gary is as well, because he's still got that Lewis Hamilton love, like many people, for the Silver Arrows. But listen, let's push it forward, George, and talk a little bit about Red Bull. The big quote from Martin Brundle today is that Max's performance was one for the ages. But before we get into how well Max done, what happened across their weekend? The quote from Lauren McKee's talking about taking risks. They really had to salvage the weekend, didn't they?
Yeah, they came with the wrong setups, clearly. Nothing worked for either of them. And when you see Verstappen complaining that he can't drive the car, it's all over the place, you know there's a problem.
Hang on a minute. When he was about a second in front of everyone, he was still complaining every race that it was undrivable.
Well, yes, but
I feel like it's code.
It was definitely to the extremes this weekend of he couldn't drive the car. You could see every on board. He was drifting through the middle sector. He couldn't get the power down early. He was understeering everywhere. And even himself said he was just all over the place. So an absolute masterclass to do what they did for the race on Sunday for him.
Yeah, because of course Lauren McKees has come in, and I know he's taken a lot of plaudits for intricate details within how the team works with his engineering head. But is this maybe where they've gone a little bit too engineering and a little bit too experimental, perhaps?
Possibly. I think there was always going to be a circuit that Red Bull just didn't suit. And maybe this was that circuit. I just think, obviously, they changed everything, got the new engine in there, and that made a massive difference. But I think,
and they probably returned the setup to the sprint setup, right?
Probably, more than likely, because Max was still pretty good in the sprint, considering. I believe, I can't remember the results now off the top of my head. So Max in the sprint, didn't he still finish?
Max in the sprint finished 4th, but he was chasing down after a poor qualifying, wasn't he?
Yes, so he still had some pace, and I just think they tried something different for the race. It didn't work, and then they just put all their eggs in the basket of changing everything because they had no choice, really.
Good call, though. System reset and then having faith in the underlying fundamentals of the design that, if we reset to that, we're going to do better than if we stick with this that we're not understanding. Gary just backing you up, mate, and saying what a drive from Max Verstappen. And Verstappen, a genius drive from Ewan. So everyone impressed with Max Verstappen. We know how good he is, don't we? Where is he with regards to a championship challenge for the rest of 2026 for you, buddy?
25 or 26?
Sorry, 2025. Yes, there we go.
I think, unfortunately, he's ran out of races. I think he had to win this weekend to have any chance. I think the last 2 weekends have not been that great for Red Bull. I thought, again, there was a time, especially after the summer break, where he won those back-to-back races, Austin, and you were thinking, it's on, the fifth is on. And again, I've not been a huge fan of Max because of obviously everything that happened in 21. So to start then putting a neutral hat on and thinking this guy is just something else.
Particularly because we know how difficult that car is, right?
Yeah, he's a fabulous driver, and he's doing everything that he needs to do to just be in the title hunt, which is crazy to think, because at the beginning of the season it was looking like it was going to be McLaren everything, and he's brought it back to what, 56 points is it now, or something along those lines?
It is 49, I think. 40,
Oh,
is it 41, 56? Yeah, 49 points behind Norris. 3 races and 1 sprint to go.
yeah.
But let me ask you, a bit similar to the Oscar Lando scenario, would we be seeing this if McLaren had continued to develop their car? Have the team almost left their 2 drivers racing with not one arm behind their back, but let's say half a hand?
I mean, the changes that Red Bull made to the car definitely made a difference. But like you say, it's hard to really know, because if we had another year of these regs, would McLaren have just taken an extra step? I'd probably say because it's Max Verstappen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he still would have been chasing them down, regardless of upgrades. But I do think it would have been a lot harder, and maybe he wouldn't have had these Austin where he got the clean sweep of everything and got like 50 odd points off them in one race. I don't think that would have been possible, because I don't think McLaren would have been in the positions they were in to crash and have the carnage in the sprint in Austin and things like that.
Do you think that Max has still got an appetite for it all? Has this kind of re-engaged him a little bit, this little purple patch that they've had?
I think Horner leaving re-engaged him. I think Jos Verstappen himself has said that Max is enjoying himself again. And if that's the case, then 2026 he could be one of the favourites, even if he has got a slightly dodgy car. You can't write him off at all. You just can't write him off for anything. But
Gary making the point there as well, it's just not in his DNA either to be half-hearted. And I guess even if it wasn't personal with Horner, just a fresh set of ideas and a fresh mindset going into that stable after so long, perhaps could only be a good thing.
Yeah, and Laura Mekies did an absolutely fantastic job for the time that he was at Racing Bulls. You've only got to look at their form this season. We'll get into those, I'm sure, later on, but he did a fantastic job with them whilst he was there, and it makes you wonder why Ferrari let him go in the first place, because he seems to be quite good at his job. Seems to know how to rally the troops, as it were.
Yeah, very true, but maybe there just wasn't that step up at the time for him to take, I guess.
Especially when I think they just got Fred at the time, or renewed Fred or something along those lines.
Yeah, and you don't know what other opportunities are going to come across the grid and who's talking to who. And I mean, Fred was a bit of a strange acquisition, wasn't he? Everyone did look and go, oh, well, hang on, the guy from Alfa Romeo, but then they talked about the relationships with Charles Leclerc and then Lewis, of course. And yeah, so who knows? Hindsight is an absolutely beautiful thing. But looking at Red Bull in the second seat now, they were very clear that a decision was going to happen after Mexico. Why have we still not heard anything?
It's hard to say. Maybe Laurent wants to look at Yuki himself, knowing Yuki from Racing Bulls. He wants to maybe give him a bit more time. Obviously, it's kind of hard to give him more time when we're right near the end of the season. The decision has to be made somewhere. I just think, I think he's just wanted to give him more time, give Yuki the chance just to prove what he can do in that Red Bull, give him the upgrades that Max has got. But ultimately, that car is just cursed, it seems. So he was always sort of fighting a losing battle, even when he went in there. Was it 2 races into the season?
Yeah.
He was in that car, and you just think, what on earth?
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think that they pulled the plug early on Lawson, not just because of performance, but also because marketing. It was the Japanese Grand Prix, wasn't it? So it just meant that they could just drop a bomb on Japan with regards to marketing, get all that energy behind them. But it hasn't paid off for the team or for Yuki.
I think,
But
unfortunately for Yuki as well, is he's a Honda driver, isn't he?
yeah,
He's only in that stable for Honda, so it wouldn't shock me if he is forced out of the team for 2026. Truthfully,
yeah, Villeneuve said a couple of races ago. I don't know if you saw it on the punditry. He said Honda know that he's not good enough. No, sorry, Red Bull know he's not good enough. He's only in there because of the contact with Honda. But at the same time, we know Yuki Tsunoda is not a terrible racing driver from his performances at Racing Bulls, etc. It's just a difficult car to drive, and then I guess you're looking at who's ever going to go in there next, hoping that next season's car isn't the same.
yeah. I mean, like Gary's just said there, he is a decent driver. There's no dispute about it. He's done a very good job. He did deserve to be in Formula One. I don't want people saying that he wasn't good enough for Formula One, because he did do a good job getting there in the first place and did drive really well in that Racing Bulls. It's just that Red Bull, as we all know, is so hard to drive, and I just really hope whoever goes in that seat, and I plead that it's Hadjar, because I think he's done a fantastic job, but I just hope that they don't completely crush his career, because I think he's got
Yeah, I
so
wonder if
much
they've done
potential.
any previous car testing with him, because it's because you need to see that you want a comparable really of Yuki and Isaac, but you can't get that because this season's V carb is very good,
Yeah,
and this season's Red Bull is absolutely terrible. So even if
imagine.
that's a tough one, that what would you do if you were the head of Red Bull? Who would you put where?
I think you've got to give Isaac a chance in the Red Bull. He's been
Mm,
phenomenal this season. First season in the sport, he had that awful thing in Australia where he crashed out on the formation lap, and obviously Anthony Hamilton went and consoled him, and he picked himself up, and he's been absolutely phenomenal this season. So you've got to give him a chance. I think ultimately Yuki's going because of the Honda contract. I think he's not going to get a seat in the. He's not going to get a seat in the Racing Bull. I don't think it's right to put him back in there. I think it would be quite demoralising for him as a driver. And I just think you give Hadjar the chance, and you get Lindblad up from F2 and let
mm.
him drive the Racing Ball and see what he can do, and then you
Yeah,
can
yeah, he's been
compare the
very good
two
this
from
year.
next season.
Yeah,
Compare the
Ewan, I love
two.
it. He's mentioned this before, just talking about the effect of karma and doing the dirty on Sergio Perez, and that's what Red Bull are paying the
Yeah.
price for. And then Gary just also referencing about it'd be good to see if Hadjar's done any testing of the Red Bull behind
Imagine if
closed
you'd
doors.
done some sort of simulator work or something, you'd have
Mm.
thought, because obviously it's all done on base now, isn't it? With Red Bull, it's all the whole unit is both teams are on base as far as I understand.
Yeah, I know that they were planning to bring racing balls closer. That's for sure. I'm not sure exactly where they are, but yeah, it's a tough one, and it'll be interesting to see whoever's in that second seat what they do in the 2026 regs, and of course, the first litmus test will be seeing how Max does in that car. And
Yeah.
like all teams, I guess really you're expected to be within 3/10 of a second of your teammate, aren't you? Even if it is Max Verstappen.
I think maybe Max. I mean, it probably is the three temps that Red Bull say, but I think half a second is probably probably a better estimation. I think if you're within half a second of Max, you're doing something right. And I'm sure Albon was for a time when he was there for a
Mm.
few races, and he was doing a good job. And then obviously they dumped him as well, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, it was that couple of the sliding doors moments. He got retired by Lewis Hamilton, didn't he, when he was leading at one point, and
Twice.
there was another one, and you think, oh, if
Twice.
only that didn't happen, how different things could be.
Because Albon was doing very good. I think like I said, I think he was within that sort of 5/10 of max, which is what they
Mm.
wanted from him. And those first couple of races, he was sort of scoring P6s, which was all they asked of him. Really, they didn't want him anywhere near max. It was
But
just
this
consolidate.
was back in a time where they truly believed the 3/10. Then
Yes,
now they'd settle for 5/10.
I think they have to. I think the
Yeah.
grand scheme is Max is worth 3/10 of a second himself
Mm.
over a car, and then any car advantage is Max again. He can drive through it. We've all
But
seen.
let's push it forwards then, because we've got about 15 minutes left. We've got a few
Oh,
teams
wow.
to get through,
That's
but
got
no, but listen, I always love it when it's like this. The conversation is just flowing nice and naturally, and we're doing our thing and talking passionately about F1, which is what we're here to do.
That's what we're here for.
Taking a look at the Haas team, another amazing performance from Ollie Behrman. And I want to put a point to you, and I did put this in the notes that I sent over. He seems to have really come into his own since he's got a racing ban hanging over him. So what's he done this race weekend? Ensured that another one hangs over him until next May.
Well, he's doing something because it's working. Because he's been phenomenal these last few weekends. He's been Ferrari's best driver. Let's say that.
Yeah, Gary backing it up, saying a quality drive from Behrman once again this weekend. And I guess the thing is, as well, it isn't just about the drive in the Grand Prix, it's the qualifying. He's showing that he has got skill and finesse in a Formula One car. The one lap pace is there if he's got the machine underneath him. Is this going to be raising a few eyebrows at Ferrari, perhaps?
I think it's got to. I think there was talk of him being pole position for the race this weekend. I think it was, or was it the sprint? It was one of them, but he was
in the sprint quali. Yeah, he was well in it. Yeah, you're right.
So they've got to be looking at it, and I hate to say it, being a Lewis fan, but if Lewis's form continues into 26, I think Behrman for 27, Behrman and Leclerc.
Yeah, I don't think Lewis would ever be pushed, would he? But do you think it's a decision he might make?
I think if he gets the vibe you get from that team is they haven't listened to him this season. And I think if he gets that again next season, he'll be gone. I think
we'll get into Ferrari in a little bit. You say not listening to him. Apparently, they shouldn't be talking, but we will leave that to the end of the show. Gary, just to pick you up, yes, bud, he received a penalty point for the incident with Liam Lawson, wasn't it? I think did they both get a time penalty for it? It was because
I can't remember.
It was something. Oh, no, sorry, it was Lance Stroll, wasn't it? It was Lance Stroll, because Lance Stroll squeezed him onto the grass, and then I think that got him agitated, Behrman, and then he's gone a little bit over the mark, and yeah, he has received another penalty point, which and his set doesn't come off now until Miami next season, which is the beginning of May. So he has got a good few races of best behaviour coming his way.
He's got to hold on and hope for the best. Then, no more crashes. Just stay out of trouble. Get pole position. Get pole position in Vegas. That keeps you out of trouble.
Yeah, that's it. Pole position, and then just head off into the distance. But listen, bud. So of course he's at Haas at the moment, and we know they're the smallest team on the grid by a long way. Is there also going to be other teams looking at Ollie Behrman with this performance? Could he be pushing up the midfield after 2026?
I think if Ferrari don't contact him, I think he has to potentially look up the grid. I mean, the only issue is where do you go, I guess, is the other side, because Mercedes look pretty locked in with Antonelli and George at the moment. Max, could he join Max at Red Bull? Would you do that to him? I don't know, because would Ferrari let him go there? If Oscar left McLaren, could he find himself in a McLaren seat maybe? Because he looks that good at the minute. He's proven that he can do it in a Haas. He can pretty much do it in most cars.
Yeah, and Gary making the point as well that it's a good time for Haas to start flying because Cadillac are about to enter. So all of a sudden, a lot of American eyeballs are going to be on the sport. So although they're a small team at the moment, Haas, do you think that there could be a big wave of investment about to come their way?
They've definitely upped their pace in the last few races, since it seems to be getting closer that Cadillac are coming. Just going to answer Ewan's question. I think
here we go.
Does Leclerc have to leave Ferrari to be a world champion? I think so. I do think so. I think he's got to be in the same boat as Lewis. He's got to be looking at 26. Like, if I don't win a world title now, what chance have I got? Because at the minute, he could be in the wrong car completely next season.
Yeah.
Like the engine could just be the worst thing on the grid, so he's got to be looking. But it's that whole dream of the red again, isn't it? It's the thing that lured Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel to the team. So it's hard to say.
Has Charles done enough though to garner interest from other teams, particularly looking at his age? You know, he's on that. He's probably on now. But the next one would possibly be the biggest contract of his career, so he'd be looking for big money. Does the performance deserve it?
I think he's proven this season with the podiums in what is arguably probably the fifth fastest car at some race venues that he has got the pace. But he hasn't really. I mean, the amount. If you look at the stats, obviously, it's that whole thing of he's got X amount of pole positions, but has only won like 2 races from pole or something along those lines. And you go maybe, but it's hard to say because it's again who would pick him up. Like, is Max going to retire early and he's going to end up at Red Bull or something? You just can't. You just don't know really.
Yeah, and he's also going to want to go in possibly elsewhere as very much a number one. He's been very much the prince of Ferrari for a long time, hasn't he? But listen, buddy, let's push it forwards. We'll get into Ferrari's performance across the weekend in a little bit, but I just want to jump next into the Racing Bulls, V-Carb, who had a very productive race weekend. Yeah, and Isaac Hadjar, we talked a little bit about him already. Where would you put him with regards to Rookie of the Season?
It's between him and Bortoletto for me. Maybe Behrman's sort of entering the conversation over the last few races, but
not Kimi at all.
It's hard to judge Kimi on the basis of jumping in a quick car, if that makes sense. Like, he's expected to be getting these results. And I wasn't expecting Isaac Hadjar to get a podium in Formula One this season.
Yeah, and also it's the qualifying performance that really catches the eye, isn't it? So
he's always thereabouts with the Ferraris as well, like on the grid always.
Yeah, 13 Q3 appearances in 21 races. And we have to remember a lot of the time he might be spending time in the midfield as well, so trying to keep your nose out of trouble. But if you put him in a better machine, you know, where he can get off the line quicker and away, who knows what he can go on to achieve.
Put him in that Red Bull. That's my stance on it.
Right, the boys in the chat box as well just saying a great race for V-Car, both drivers in the points, and Gary saying, yeah, great qualifying and race as well. Let's just quickly look at the other side of the garage. Liam Lawson with a solid performance. His season has really picked up now that the spotlight is off of him. But where does his future lie? You know, after not standing up to what was required in the senior team, what do you do with Liam Lawson in the Red Bull family?
I think he's in another position where he either stays at Racing Bulls or he goes off and does other series, because he's not going to get promoted back to Red Bull, similar to how Gasly wasn't and Albon wasn't. They got rid of them. They let him go. And I think he's going to fall into that trap of, where does he go? Like Tsunoda, like, what do you do with him now? Like, he's not proven himself in a Red Bull, and he's only good enough to be an sister team, but you're not going to keep him there forever because there are some great talents coming through F2 and F3 at the moment that they need to get in those cars as quickly as they can.
Do you think it's a long-term strategy still with the team to have this junior outfit as well? Because we know that there was a mystery offer in the last few weeks of $2 billion for the team, that's $500 million more than Alpine are currently on the market apparently for. But you think with them rejecting it, they're going to maintain this for a while?
I think it's the best interest for Red Bull, because it means they can bed drivers into Formula One before sticking them up against Max. And if Max decides to pull a shock Nico Rosberg early retirement, then suddenly you're going to need drivers to come in quick, and you're not going to get. You're not going to get that if your drivers are in F2. They're not going to get that experience.
Can you see any other competitor following suit, or do you think that time's gone now because of the cost of teams?
I think it's gone now, unfortunately. I think Formula One is expensive now, just to run one team.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm just sorting out your mic settings because Gary fed back and said there's a little bit. A little bit of echo on your mic. I don't know why the settings keep
drifting.
Yeah.
Just turn it down a little bit. I don't know if that's helped.
Yeah, no. I've got nothing, but I mean, Gary's pretty good at giving us feedback. So thanks once again, Gaz. We will stick on top of that. So I'm just tweaking that a little bit. Yeah, no, yeah, I agree that other teams must be looking at it now, thinking that there's a distinct advantage, but it's very difficult to pull off the same kind of setup
Yeah,
nowadays with teams being valued at way over a billion.
Unless Williams and Mercedes with James Vowles and Toto do something in the future, I don't see it ever happening again.
Let's push it forward, bud, and talk about Kick Sauber. Now, of course, it was a big race for the team with a Brazilian driver, Gabi Bortoleto, but it's the other side of the garage who actually came through and scored some points for them. What did you make of Bortoleto's approach to race weekend? What did he get wrong?
Possibly just got overcome with the reaction of the fans. Obviously, it's his first home race and just got caught up in the moment. It can happen to the best drivers, I feel. So possibly it's that. But
yeah, I mean, particularly if you think about the sprint, that unnecessary overtake towards the end of the race, was it for P12 or P13?
Yeah,
it was in front of the fans on the start-finish straight, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the will of the fans. Loads of drivers have said, haven't they, over the years? Even though you can barely hear them, just the energy, you can feel it, and you want to do that extra thing for them. And as Gary said, I feel sorry for him. His first home Grand Prix, and he's unfortunately not had the greatest race in the world. Like, yeah, it must be hard for him, and I hope he bounces back in Vegas.
But you mentioned that he's up there for you for Rookie of the Year. So were you surprised that he's done as well as he has done? Are you surprised generally with the Sauber team?
Yes, 100%. I did not expect them to be anywhere near scoring podiums. Nico Hulkenberg in Silverstone, I mean, that was a weird scenario for me because being a Lewis fan, he was chasing him down, and it was like, go Hulk, go. I wanted that podium. I think Stake in general have been very, very good this season, considering they were like a dustbin at the back of the grid last season. They just were nowhere, not fighting anybody. I think they've done
it shows you what's gone in there, right? So since the Audi evolution has been announced, it shows you that they're clearly doing a lot behind the scenes. Mattia Binotto is there at every race pretty much now, and we know he's head of the Audi F1 project.
As well.
Pardon?
Jonathan Wheatley there as well, going in from Red Bull and bringing his experience. That's made a difference.
Yeah, too true. Yeah, there's significant investment happening in that team, and Ewan just backing up, like you said, George, just got caught up in the moment. Gabi Bortoleto. Hulk on the other side, though. First Q3 appearance of the season. I mean, what's taken him so long?
I think, again, as much as I just praised the car, it's still not on the same sort of level as some of the other teams. Like Williams have taken a step forward, and certain other teams around them, like Haas, with their backing. I hadn't actually thought about that at the time, but they had obviously the Toyota backing as well now.
Yeah.
Which may be helping Haas along. And I think because they've all taken such a step forward, it's obviously taken him that little extra just to get that car and the right conditions hit this weekend. And he managed to do it, which, again, phenomenal drive from him to get into the top 10.
Yeah, and like you said, we have to remember last season they scored 1 point, was it, or two? Was it a P9 or a P10?
It was bad.
Yeah, I remember it was 1 points finish, either P9 or P10 with Guan Yu Zhou. And now they've got 62 points this season, so no one would have called that.
They've done massively well.
Yeah, they're only P9, but there's only 20 points between them and P6, the Racing Bulls. So, again,
it can happen in 3 races. Some big shunts, possibly, and who knows what.
Yeah, particularly when you're talking midfield teams, right?
Yeah. Yes.
A more positive weekend, finally, for Alpine. After 7 pointless weekends in a row, they managed to get some points on the board in both the sprint and the Grand Prix, courtesy of Pierre Gasly. How important was this for the team for morale, not just for this season, but also building for next season?
I think having the announcement of Colapinto this weekend as well definitely helped. It brought the team around. It was like, okay, these are our drivers for next season. So it almost gives you that, right, that's gone. Let's focus on what we can do right now. And I think, yeah, Pierre again showing that he's a great driver, just in a very, very bad car currently, which is unfortunate for him.
Why do you think that the team, rumour has it, has been put up for sale, though? This is the time where F1 is flying. They've had all this investment from VIPs and stars that we heard of last season. Why do you think now all of a sudden they're on the market?
They are changing engine supply. I think that has a big play in it because I think Renault had a lot of around the team, a lot of say around the team still. And I think changing to a Mercedes power unit ultimately meant they've got to go up for sale, I feel, because they've got to get rid of the Renault backing and bring in somebody else. And wasn't it Christian Horner, the rumour a couple of weeks ago, that possibly might float around there? And you just go, okay.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing that Christian Horner's been on the phone to every team, right? Is the official rumour.
Yes, that seems to be the thing. But yeah, I just think the Renault project is over with them, so they're just trying to cut their losses, get a bit of money out of them, and see what happens, really.
Real shame historically for Formula One, though, right? The name of Renault.
Yes, no, absolutely. The fact that they rebranded to Alpine, you almost felt like this was inevitable, and they were looking for a way out, and now they've got it. They're going into a new engine regulation with different engine that they're not building. There's a reason to get out of there, isn't it, really? And Formula One isn't cheap.
You feel like it's a transition moment, and yeah, you are making the point as well that they need to improve the management of the team, which again has also been a bit of a carousel. They need like almost a James Vowles moment, don't they? Like Williams had a couple of seasons ago.
100%, 100%.
And then if they do, who knows what the future could hold.
Real
quickly to jump through a couple of teams, and then we've got to get on to Scuderia Ferrari, of course. So Williams, really a weekend to forget. 0 points across both the sprint and the Grand Prix. The only team not to register any points on the board across either race this season. Surprised?
Okay. I didn't know that. That has shocked me. I didn't realise that. I hadn't actually thought about it. Wow.
Yeah, because Aston Martin got some points with Fernando Alonso in the sprint. And as we mentioned just now, Alpine got points in the sprint and the Grand Prix. Williams didn't deliver anywhere this season. This race, sorry.
That's a real shock, considering the Mercedes engine looked like the best engine all weekend. Mercedes.
It just was an uneventful weekend. I guess the main thing that I heard out of their performance was the incident between Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, at the start of the race, which it's a racing incident. You can't. Yeah, turn one in Brazil. It was always going to happen to somebody.
Let's push it forward then. Aston Martin, real quick. All eyes towards 2026. It feels like for this outfit, but they did get some points in the sprint with Fernando Alonso. Lance Stroll actually making it into Q3 in some kind of format for the first time since China as well. It was in the sprint though.
I just laugh at Lance Stroll. Sorry. Yeah, good for him. He needs a good weekend, I think, somewhere along the line.
I love this Gary jumping. I love that Gary jumping to the defence of Williams. They had a great livery this weekend. They did the classic golf livery. Was brilliant.
It was nice.
That was voted for by fans, wasn't it?
I think so, but it was weird that it just looked weird on a Williams because I expected it to be a McLaren, and it just threw me for a loop all weekend. And maybe that's why I didn't pay that much attention to them, because I was really confused as to what's going on.
So, is this Hamilton's last season? What, this season, Ewan? Okay, that's a big question. Let's just pump it forwards then and talk about it was a calamitous weekend for them, wasn't it? It was. Luck was not on their side when it came to the Grand Prix. I will give them that, right? But FP1 was shocking. They messed up Lewis's squint quali run. And then Lewis's pace again just wasn't there. Why is that?
That car, I don't understand why they built that car in the first place. I've held on to this, and I've said in my content previously why they changed from the SF24, which was on par with McLaren at the back end of last season, to this car that neither driver understands, and Charles Leclerc just gets very, very, just seems to nail the setup and then gets podiums with it. But I just don't get why they bothered changing the car the last year of the regulations. Just don't understand.
For you, buddy, then, who has to pay the price for that big decision?
Starts from the top down. I think questions need to be asked. I think you're always going to have a trouble because Loic Serra hasn't officially started there yet at the point of the development of this car. So this is previous team. So starts with them, but I'm pretty sure people have left this season from what I've seen already. Certain parts of the team have gone. So hopefully look Sarah at the wheel this time. Obviously he was with Mercedes. It just seems to be Ferrari in general, doesn't it? Unfortunately.
Where does this team sit in a sense of the leadership of Fred Basser? We've seen a new generation of team principals coming through that have engineer heads, and Fred is maybe a bit more of the old school of the Toto Wolff, the Christian Horner. You know, he's a leader of men, but I'm not sure whether he could be the right person technically to see them back to success.
I think the problems start more at the top, and I think we'll get into it in a second with Elkan and the pressure that he's supposedly under and things like that. And I think it works it down, down a chain ultimately. And yeah, Fred is old school, absolutely, but maybe right now Ferrari need to keep stability with their team principal because they've changed countless number of times and they've lost Binotto, he's done a phenomenal job at Kick Sauber for being there 6 months, for example, and Laura Mekies has gone on to become Red Bull team principal and seems to be doing a good job there. So they've lost big people, and I just think, it needs to start at the top. A lot needs to change at the top of.
Is there any way within the leadership structure that they could have kept the likes of Binotto and Mekies and still brought in a Fred Basser? Because at that point, they possibly had the machinery. Now they don't seem to have the machinery. If you went back 2 years ago, they had the machinery, but it was a lot of strategy calls and organisational stuff that they were getting wrong.
I mean, it depends on the ambition of certain people, because obviously it's clear that Laura Mekies wanted to go on and be a team principal for a team. That's why he left in the first place. And I think, again, from the top down, I think you just look at the John Elkan and the constant sacking of principals, just regardless, like even Arriva Bene and people like that who came before, who when they had the machinery, they still sacked him. It just seems to be ingrained in Ferrari team culture that they'll do things their way, and that's the end of it. They won't budge. It's their way or no way, and their way doesn't work.
What did you make of the comments? We talked about them off air, the comments that were made today by John Elkan about the drivers.
I mean, first of all, wow. For that to come out after the race they've just had, that's a big statement to the team as a whole. They need to get things together. They really do. But ultimately, you can't blame the drivers. Look at the drivers they've had. They've had Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, Sebastian Vettel, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton. We're talking race winners here, and championship winners. And Hamilton being statistically the best driver ever in that car, and he can't seem to get on with it. I think it shows more pressure on Elkan than it does the Ferrari guys, because he's trying to go, right, get stuff together, otherwise I'm going to lose my job. Yeah. You guys need to just focus on driving. Stop talking, just focus on driving so we can try and get second in the constructors, because that's our goal this season. But I do think it's
saying they couldn't organise a booze up in a brewery. Not according to Elkan, though. Elkan said that they have the team members are of world championship quality and work, and that the drivers need to start performing.
Is he talking 20 years ago?
Yeah, too true.
Because what have they done right, the strategy team? Other than, I think there was one race where Lewis switched onto the right tyre all season and he got P6 or whatever it was. They've been awful, and they've been awful for 20 years. And when I was outside looking in, following Lewis to Ferrari, it was like, it can't be that bad, surely. And then it's like, oh no, it's worse than that bad. It's terrible. It's horrendous.
Is it that bad? Gary's asking. Could Max Verstappen not even drive them to victory?
I mean, Charles Leclerc is as quick as Max Verstappen in the right machinery, I feel. So I think Max would struggle as well. I think the car just seems to change from a degree of heat, to be honest. If it's too hot, it just goes completely off the rail and they can't drive it. If it's too cool, they can't drive it. It's on such a fine margin. And I just don't think even Max could drive that car, truthfully.
Yeah, it was so interesting, wasn't it? Fred Vasseur come out and said, we want to get, there's this untapped potential in the car. We just want to be able to ride it a little lower. And I think it was Karun Chandhook who said, every team wants to be able to ride their car lower, but this is the art of Formula One. You ride it as low as you can without rubbing down the plank underneath and by getting true performance.
I mean, it's these regulations in general. I just this whole wind tunnel, this whole ground effect era of cars have been rubbish for the most part. I feel personally. I think only one team seemed to hit the nail on the head for most of it, and that was Red Bull. And then they started going backwards once they reached like a development curve and tried to go further. So I just think I'll be glad when this generation of cars goes, because I think they've probably been one of the worst ideas for Formula One, in my opinion.
Do you think that perhaps it's taken driver skill out of the equation, and if you can nail your Venturi tunnels, you win?
I think there's a degree of driver skill, because obviously the likes of Max are still hitting it nail on the head most weekends. I think Lewis and Alonso, drivers like that, the old timers, they've struggled massively with these cars because all the downforce being all over the place, and it doesn't suit their driving style. So I think there's still a degree of driver skill, but the Venturi tunnels is the main thing that's driving these cars forward. And we'll go back to McLaren on this. I don't see Lando and Oscar as world champions right now. I don't think they're good enough. It would almost go down as, and I'm going to upset some people here, the worst world champion in history for me.
Okay.
Just the way this season's panned out, because you put Lewis or Max or Charles or even Fernando in that McLaren, in theory they should have walked it. Like, they should have been clear by the break, in my opinion. And I just think, with the way McLaren have fiddled with the title as well, it's just like, for me, it would be the worst world champion in history, personally.
That is a big soundbite, my man. Just before I let you go, I just want to ask, we've talked a little bit about Lewis's state of mind and how he's feeling about being in the team and, when could be his last season. What about Charles Leclerc? Where do you think he sees his future?
I think he could go as well for 27. I think if the engine isn't right and they're not competing, they're not winning races, I think they could lose both Lewis and Charles, or potentially lose Charles and get Behrman alongside Lewis. And maybe that'll be the change. Maybe Lewis will stay for another year because it'd be easier to stay on for another year for Lewis. But Charles, he's going to want to win. He's getting to that prime, like you said earlier, that prime big contract, title challenging. Let's see what he can do in a car that actually works. And yeah, one or both will leave Ferrari in 27 if the car's not right, for me.
Whoa, you've just lined up there, mate. A tantalisingly exciting, silly season for us there.
27 could be that, and I can't wait for it because, after the Lewis thing in last year when we had the carnage of Lewis, imagine how big it would be if Ferrari had to go and get two drivers. Like, who's going there? Who you're putting in that car?
Yeah, and maybe then they think about who is the boss to lead them into a new era. But listen, bud, before I let you go, we'll turn our attention to Las Vegas, which is happening in a couple of weeks. Just quickly get your predictions for that one. How do you think it will go down in Vegas?
I am going to go with the form book in terms of the track itself. I'm going to fancy some Mercedes magic again this season there, because I feel they looked good in Brazil and they won last year in Vegas. So let's go for a George Kimi 1-2. Why not? Let's just go for it.
So not quite Kimi 3 in a row versus George.
I think George overall has the pace over Kimi still, but who knows? We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see.
Listen, from one George to another, George Talks F1 has most definitely done that, as we've made it to an hour and 15 minutes. But George, absolutely loved it. And just to give Gary a shout out as well, that his prediction for Vegas, Max to return to the forefront. Kimi is going to be his Mercedes driver for P2. And then Lando. So both of you feel it's going to be another difficult time for Oscar Piastri.
I think Max will be on the podium as well. I think that new engine is going to pay dividends in Vegas, definitely.
Okay, but it's going to be a Mercedes 1-2.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Let's blow the World Championship open again. Maybe it's just wishful thinking.
Yeah, definitely, buddy. Listen, as a neutral myself, I couldn't wish for anything more. But George, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. I'll be clipping all your bits and posting them out across the socials. It's been amazing to have you on, buddy. So thank you so much for giving up your time this evening.
And thank you, Ewan and Gary in the chat as well, and yourself for inviting me on again. It's been a pleasure. Hope to do this again, maybe next season, or we'll squeeze ourselves in towards the end if possible. But if not, definitely next season.
Sure. Cheers, bud. As he said, I'll back that up. Ewan, Gaz, thank you so much for joining us once again on a Monday evening. Hopefully, we'll see both of you in a couple of weeks to review the Vegas Grand Prix. Who's going to set their alarm clock? Isn't it race time of 4 a.m.?
Yeah, I shan't be getting up for that one. I'm actually on holiday, so I think I might be watching the highlights of that one. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, well, no, I know that Sky Sports do a full live replay at around about 8 or 9 a.m. So I think I'll do that one. I'm not quite that hardcore, but whatever way it happens, I'll be soaking it up in some shape or form. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. And please share this far and wide. I'll be clipping it up across the socials, George, as well. So feel free to share it. You've been absolutely brilliant, buddy. And hopefully we can have you on again the show soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, James. Take it easy. Look after yourself.
See you, bud. Take care.